This webinar will focus on the current pensions landscape in Canada, including CPP, the attack on pensions, and Labour's response. It's going to take a broad approach to pensions to be inclusive of PSAC's diverse membership. And like I said, members will have an opportunity to ask questions in the end. Let's get right into it. I'd like to introduce Barb Byers. She is the Canadian Labour Congress Secretary-Treasurer. Barb's life has been spent fighting for the underdog from her early years as a social worker to the presidencies of first the Saskatchewan Government Employees Union and then the Saskatchewan Federation of Labour, before being elected as CLC Executive Vice President in 2002 and then Secretary-Treasurer in 2014. Through her work at the CLC, Barb has been responsible for labour education, Medicare and healthcare, workplace training and technology, employment insurance, apprenticeships, and issues of concern to women workers, workers with disabilities, and gay, bisexual, lesbian, and transgender workers. Barb, welcome, and thanks for joining us.
Hi, my name is Barb Byers, as has been pointed out, and thanks for the invite. This is really exciting, and to be connected with people in the prairies, which is my home. So let's talk a little bit about why did the Canadian Labour Congress decide to do retirement security for all. Well, we launched this campaign, this work that we're doing in the depths of the financial crisis and the recession on Labor Day, 2009. And why is that? Well, we heard some pretty incredible stories from our members. We heard from people who had lost their jobs and their pensions when their employers went bankrupt with underfunded pension plans. We heard from people who were laid off during the recession. They were taking their RRSPs, their Registered Retirement Savings Plans, to cope with a broken employment insurance program. And we heard of workers nearing retirement whose retirement savings accounts were hit by stock markets that had plunged. Any of us that have RRSPs know exactly what happened there. We also heard about the majority of Canadian workers who have no access to a pension and are dependent on Canada Pension and old age security. So our critics said in a financial crisis and a recession that this was the worst time to start talking about improving pensions, and we said, you know what, we think it's the best time to do it because we really knew that we had to talk not just about bargaining pensions at our bargaining tables, but we needed to talk about them in terms of what was needed for the vast majority of Canadians, the over 90% who have either only the Canada Pension or whose retirement savings depend on their Canada Pension.
Great, thanks, Barb.
Thanks.
So now I want to introduce our second speaker. Barb will be back with more momentarily. So Chris Roberts is the National Director of the Social and Economic Policy Department of the Canadian Labour Congress. Chris has worked for the CLC since 2011. He's a labour educator, pension trustee, and the author of Pension Confidential with Robert Drummond. Chris holds a PhD in political science from York University in Toronto and lives and works in Ottawa. Welcome, Chris.
Thanks, Jeffrey. And thank you to Marianne and the PSAC for the opportunity to be here tonight. Like Barb, I'm really excited to be part of the discussion. I'm going to follow up on what Barb was just talking about and set the stage for the problem we're facing in Canada with respect to retirement security. Canada, like other countries, is growing older. We see it in our workplaces and in our communities. The baby boom cohort born between 1945 and 1970 is now proceeding into retirement. Canada is no different than other countries in this regard. It just so happens that we're, at the moment, happen to be a bit younger than other G8 countries, but we're actually aging even faster. And in the course of about 25 short years, we're going to be, about 1 in 4 people are going to be seniors in Canada. So we're aging along with really the rest of the world, both advanced industrialized countries and emerging economies in that regard. So the country is changing. The demographics are really changing the look of the country. And as it happens, we're also living longer, so we're spending more time in retirement than ever before. Back in the 1950s, if you made it to age 65, you could expect to live about another 13 years if you're a man, maybe another 15 years if you're a woman. Well, that life expectancy at age 65 has just continued to rise, and now we're looking at about 19 years extra years of life if you make it to age 65 if you're a man, and above 20 years of life if you're a woman. Women have always had greater longevity, but really it's we're living longer after 65, both men and women. So this will present a challenge insofar as a bigger chunk of the Canadian population is going to spend a greater duration, a greater period of time in retirement after working lives. Even though we're working longer as well, not everyone can work longer, and in fact, many of us are still forced to retire due to the pace of work. In fact, our bodies are worn out, or we're pushed into retirement as well. So the fact of the matter is we're spending longer lives after our prime working years. This presents a bit of a challenge because as the demographics shift, the ratio of seniors and people in retirement phase of their lives is going to rise relative to those core working age, that core working age population, age between the ages of 15 and say 64. Back in the 1970s, the ratio of people of the age 65 and older to that core working age population was about 8 to 1. 8 working age individuals per senior. I'm sorry, I've switched that around, but about 8 working age individuals per senior in the early 70s. By 2013, that was below 5 working age individuals per senior. And by the late 2050s, that could be as low as 2 working age individuals per senior. So this will put potential pressure on economies and local economies and Canadian society into the future. A lot of retirements are coming in this country. There's projected about 3.6 million retirements over the 10-year period after 2013. Roughly 300,000 people leaving the workforce every year. That will rise to about 400,000 per year in the early 2020s and continue at that pace for some time. This wouldn't be a problem at all. In fact, there's no reason why anyone should be worried about this. The problem really lies in the fact that we have a retirement income inadequacy problem. And survey after survey and study after study reflects this. Just most recently, a study performed by Statistics Canada showed that roughly a third of Canadian adults are not prepared or even preparing financially for retirement, either voluntarily or individually on their own or through an employer pension plan. And there have been attempts, most recently by McKinsey and company, to deny this reality or downplay the reality that there are a huge chunk of the baby boom cohort that's approaching retirement inadequately prepared financially for retirement. But the fact of the matter is this is a real issue facing Canada, and the majority of commentators, experts, and policymakers accept this. Going to the source of the unpreparedness for retirement, there's a number of factors that are playing into the retirement income challenge that Canadians are facing. First and foremost, our system is built around the expectation that workers would have a workplace pension at work. Our system was built on the understanding that every one of us would go to work and have the ability to save through a workplace pension at our place of employment and then retire on those benefits when we left work. Well, that system, that part of our system never worked for a majority of workers. It only ever really covered about less than 50% of workers. And this system has been in slow decline. As you can see, the share of workers in Canada with a workplace pension plan has slowly been declining to the point now where about 40% of workers have access to a pension plan. The majority don't. In the private sector, about 1 in 4 have access to a workplace pension plan. And the writing is on the wall, even though the public sector pension coverage remains high, and because there's such a difference between public sector pension coverage and private sector coverage, there's a dangerous gap that's opened up whereby opponents of pension plans in the public sector in particular use the fact that most private sector workers do not have a pension to attack public sector pensions. But the writing on the wall is that all employers, especially in the private sector, but even in the public sector, are determined to reduce their costs and risks associated with sponsoring pensions. Pensions are under attack everywhere you look in this country, from coast to coast, public sector, private sector. Employers don't want to be in the business of providing pension plans. So where does that leave individuals? Well, it leaves them with individual savings, the so-called fend for yourself kind of process. But it's increasingly difficult to save adequately when we're left to fend for ourselves. And given that real wages have remained pretty flat, fairly stagnant over the last number of decades, not surprisingly, individuals and households have kept up with rising cost of living by running down their savings rate and increasing their debt levels. So the savings rate today is half of where it was 25 years ago, and the debt levels are twice as high. This is clearly unsustainable, even as a way to prop up current consumption, much less saving adequately for retirement. So those are two pillars of our three-pillar system. The third pillar, in addition to workplace pension plans, private savings arrangements, voluntary individual savings arrangements, the third is our public pension system that's paid out of taxes and payroll contributions. I'm talking about the old age security benefit, guaranteed income supplement, and the Canada Pension Plan. The problem with all of these public pension benefits is that they're simply too low, and especially the Canada Pension Plan. But when you stack them all up, the average benefit in a city like Calgary or Winnipeg will only nearly get you to the poverty line. It won't even get you over the poverty line. So I've simply stacked up the figures, the average pension benefits here for those benefits as of December 2014, comparing them against the 2013 poverty line in a big city in Canada, and much less the 2015 poverty line. And it doesn't get you to the poverty line. The average Canada Pension Plan benefit in Canada is about $540. There's a $200 a month difference for men and women. Women get an average CPP benefit per month, $200 less than men. So it's simply not adequate to keep your head above poverty. So that's where we are right now. So what are governments and stakeholders, trade unions and others doing in response? And for that, I'll hand you over to Barb.
So what is the federal government's response? Well, first of all, they decided that Prime Minister Harper would go off to Davos and he would announce an increase in the eligibility age for old age security and guaranteed income supplement. So he went off somewhere else, announced this as if we shouldn't be paying attention to it and that there should be no problem for us. Well, if you look at what's on the screen to you, increasing the eligibility age for old age security and guaranteed income supplement, in just those 2 years, is going to cost individuals up to $30,000. So every person that has to take that delay, it's a $30,000 hit. Introducing target-based pensions will remove the obligation on employers to pay earned benefits. Chris talked about how our system is built on a system where people were supposed to have pensions and set private savings and the Canada pension. But it's not working out that way. When the federal government announced it would set up a framework to allow defined benefit pension plans in the federal private sector to be converted into those target benefit pensions, this is an attack on defined benefit plans occurring all across the country. So in a target benefit plan, employer contributions are essentially fixed. And benefits only have to be paid if the investment returns can pay for them. If they can't, all the benefits, including pensions being paid to current retirees, can be reduced. And again, this breaks the pension promise to members and allows employers to escape their obligation to pay earned pension plans. Some of us are lucky enough, we've got pension plans that are based on a percentage of your best so many years of earnings and so on, and so we have some definition to it. And it's also escalator clauses are built in. Not everybody has that. The federal government also introduced what they said. You have to remember that Jim Flaherty was saying, well, maybe we do need to increase the Canada pension plan, but then at the last moment, Harper came in, basically said, no, we don't need to do that, and Flaherty a couple of days later went to meet with the provinces when they were meeting and said, we're going to have a pooled registered pension plan. Well, this is a problem because that's not really any response to any kind of security crisis in retirement. They're intended to take away our attention from the Canada pension as if, well, again, we can be in control of this. And they aren't really a pension plan. They're workplace savings plans. They're like a group registered retirement savings plan. And they don't provide a dependable pension benefit in retirement. They are totally voluntary. Employers, as you see, don't have to offer them. They don't have to contribute to them. And employees don't have to participate in them. So if you can opt out, you can't, as we've said in many other cases, build a social program on voluntary contributions. And so that makes a huge difference to this. So that we have to, any of us who know the difficulty of RRSPs and what people lost. So what's been our response? We've said we need to return the OAS and GIS eligibility age back to 65 from 67. There was no really good reason to raise it in the first place, and increasing the eligibility or the number of years is really going to hit people with disabilities and poor seniors the most. We said low-income seniors need a raise, so we said let's raise the guaranteed income supplement for the poorest seniors by spending a fraction of what are the future budget surpluses on increases to the guaranteed income supplement. We could virtually eliminate seniors' poverty in Canada. And we have said as well, obviously, we want to double the future Canada pension benefits. We've said that we oppose employers the right to convert defined benefit plans to the target benefit plans, because what essentially it is employers getting out of their legal commitments to pay earned benefits to people, and that's totally unfair. And as I just said, we as well said we wanted to double the future Canada pension benefits through a gradual, and we're going to talk about this in a few minutes, phased-in increase of the Canada pension plan saving rate. So if you look at old age poverty is especially high among single women. We see that it's way too high generally, and Canada is one of a few countries that has a rising old age poverty rate. Women are especially a hard hit in terms of poverty as seniors. Part of the benefits of living longer is that we end up being poorer. I don't know if that's a benefit, but there you go. We outlive our partners. When we look as well to racialized immigrant and Aboriginal women are at the greatest risk of poverty in their old age. And all of these groups would benefit the most from returning the old age security guaranteed income supplement eligibility to age 65. And that would really benefit a lot of people. And you know, when we're talking about this, some people may say, well, I've got a pension plan, and really what's this topic got to do with me? And what I would say to you is, take a look around at your families. Look at your parents, look at your aunts and uncles, look at people that are maybe you've lived next door to for a few years or a lot of years. Look at the parents and friends and say, you know what, this is important to all of those people, but especially to those people that have been on limited incomes. Canada Pension Plan. It is the only workplace pension plan for the majority of working Canadians. Over 11 million Canadian workers are part of the Canada Pension Plan. As you can see, the Canada Pension Plan has a lot of benefits. You know, we talk about defined benefits, and we talked about portability. Well, this is a fully portable plan if you work in Saskatchewan, or as you move to Ontario like I did a few years ago. Guess what? My pension plan comes with me. It's safe, secure, and dependable. You didn't see during the economic crisis people being told that there was no money left in the Canada pension. And every year, the Chief Actuary of Canada pronounces that the Canada Pension Plan is in sound financial health for the next 75 years. So when you hear people say to you, oh, well, the Canada Pension Plan won't be there for me anyhow, the reality is that yes, it will be. And apparently, Chris can correct me on this, but the reason it's 75 years is that's all that they're allowed to predict out. It's a predictable retirement benefit. So again, people know what they've got. It's fully indexed against inflation, and it's paid until your death. You can't outlive your Canada Pension Plan benefit like you can other kinds of savings. It's provided at a very low cost, and I think Chris will get back to this. If not, we'll get to it in the questions about the difference in management fees between Canada Pension and Registered Retirement Savings Plan. And it's paid by employers and employees equally. Everybody shares in the contributions. Our only drawback is that the Canada Pension Plan benefits are too low. And in December 2014, as Chris has pointed out, the average benefit in, for example, Manitoba was $533.64. In Saskatchewan, $520.77, and in Alberta, $559.82. So, as Chris has also pointed out, the average benefit for women is about $200 less a month than it is for men. So you take a look at that and you start thinking, that's not exactly what I'm going to retire comfortably on. And we're not talking about people that are going to be taking long trips and around the world and so on. This is just a matter of a retirement with some dignity. So what does doubling the future Canada Pension Plan benefits would mean? As Chris has said, it was the CPP was set up to replace about 25% of your pre-retirement income, and we're calling for a doubling of that. And it would benefit actually young people. We're talking about the full spectrum of people here, but this proposal would benefit young people the most because they're the people that are least likely to have a job with a pension, but would be earning an increased Canada Pension Plan benefit over their entire working lifetime. So if you look at what's on the screen now, you say a 25-year-old worker earning the average wage and salary paying into the Canada Pension Plan from now until retirement, 40 years of expanded contributions would earn a monthly Canada pension of about $2,077. But without that plan, that same person would only be $1,038. What would it cost? Well, we've got Ontario up here. I thought we had some other stats, but Ontario worker that earns an average of $30,000 over their lifetime would have an additional $2.18 per week in each year of the 7-year phased in. Now, we like to take that down to terms that people can understand. So that's 9 Timbits more each week in the first year, then 9 more Timbits each week in the second year, and then so on for 7 years. So if you could do without those 9 Timbits, you could actually double your pension, and I want you to think about which one you would like. We say cup of coffee, donut, whatever it is, you would get in exchange. If you have a similar worker earning an average of $50,000 over their working career, that would you would need to put aside an extra $3.82 each week, about 15 Timbits in the first year, and so on. Back to Chris.
So if you're wondering what those Ontario figures would look like in Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, it's actually even less expensive to double future CPP benefits in those provinces, because the provincial non-refundable tax credits are higher in Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba than they are in Ontario. In Ontario, you get a tax credit of about 5.05%. In the Prairie provinces, is about 11%. So it's actually cheaper. It's on the order of about 7 Timbits per week in each year of the phase-in, rather than 9 Timbits for somebody earning $30,000. And for somebody earning on average $50,000 on the prairies, it would be about 12 Timbits each week. So even more inexpensive on the prairies than in Ontario. So you'll hear a lot of criticism about, well, this isn't a good time to talk about expanding the Canada Pension Plan. What impact would that have on jobs? Would it cause the economy to slip into recession? Would it kill jobs? You hear a lot of this argument being made. Well, we try to argue it's actually quite reasonable and achievable to have a gradual phased-in increase in the CPP savings rate to get that doubling of future benefits. It's going to really benefit young people the most. And the reason partly is that employers have been given a fair amount of cushion and room to maneuver by the federal and provincial governments in the last little while. So we know, for instance, that between 2000 and the present, the corporate income tax rates have fallen roughly in half, and that big employers, non-financial corporations, have nearly $700 billion simply in cash sitting on their balance sheets these days, in part from those very lucrative tax cuts and the fact that the economy has been so sluggish that business investment has been quite subdued. But this is also extended to small businesses. The lifetime capital gains exemption granted to small businesses has been increased substantially and now indexed to inflation, so every year it will increase. The small business federal income tax rate has been reduced, and the federal NDP is on record as promising a further reduction in that income tax rate, and I expect other parties will follow suit. Plus, the amount of income eligible for that reduced tax rate has been increased from $300,000 to $500,000. EI premiums have been frozen for the last, for 3 years ending in 2016, and they're scheduled to be reduced in 2017. On top of this, all of this, CPP contributions by employers on behalf of their employees are 100% deductible against business income. So we think there's actually lots of space, especially if the economy grows and consumers are spending more and the economy improves, as it's likely to in the years ahead, and employers are able to accommodate a phased-in gradual increase in the CPP savings rate. I want to point out that the alternative to this is a very significant increase in our future tax bill. as all of the Canadians working today and approaching retirement retire without workplace pension plans, without an adequate Canada Pension Plan benefit, and who are living on guaranteed income supplement and OAS, which are tax-funded benefits. So our tax bill will rise and continue to rise if we don't find ways to increase our retirement savings levels today to forestall that outcome in the future. Going back to the issue of, well, won't this kill jobs, force employers to lay off workers and stall the economy? Many of these same predictions were made about increases in the Canada Pension Plan savings rate the last time CPP contributions were increased. In the 1990s, the CPP was refounded financially on renewed grounds with a higher contribution rate. And the predictions at the time, by many of the same groups making the same predictions today, was that it would be a total and unmitigated disaster for the Canadian economy, for employment, for economic growth, for the economy generally, the health of the recovery at that time. In fact, contributions rose more than were proposing they would rise in order to support a future doubling of CPP benefits. Between 1997 and 2003, they went up almost 4 percentage points. And during that same period, the economy boomed. The real GDP rose by almost a quarter, investment rose, employment rose, and the unemployment rate fell, not rose, but fell from 9.1% to 7.6% and kept falling until the recession of the 2008-2009. So really, the fears have been overblown. The doom and gloom fear-mongering has really been overblown. And in fact, even though the federal government makes many of these same claims about the economic impact in the short run of a phased-in increase in CPP contributions, their own economists, the economists working in the Department of Finance and in the federal government, according to their own modeling, suggest that any short-term headwinds created by an increase in CPP contributions would be more than offset in the medium and long term by the benefits of higher consumption possibilities by retirees in the future. So we've said, and economists in Canada have said, and pension experts have said, and municipalities have said, and anti-poverty groups and others have said, that increasing CPP benefits makes good economic sense in the long run. In fact, the labor movement after Labor Day 2009 built a huge coalition of support for expanded Canada Pension Plan benefits, from student groups to faith-based organizations to actuaries, to pension experts, to even employers in many respects, came around to understand the benefits of the existing CPP plan and why enlarging it made the most sense for the greatest number of people. And frankly, when you look at the intellectual debate, we've gotten to the point where I think we've managed to persuade a large chunk of Canadians. Our polling suggests that 75% in all parts of the country, in all provinces, including Alberta, agree that CPP should be expanded and can be expanded. We've just got to get to the point where we have all governments, or at least a majority of provinces representing a majority of the Canadian population, and the federal government, to agree that it's time to expand the Canada Pension Plan. And that's why the 2015 moment is going to be so important, to have a debate about where we're headed as our society ages? Are we going to be left to fend for ourselves with the expected outcome that we can anticipate? Or are we going to be in this together and improve upon the parts of our system that are working the best, such as the Canada Pension Plan? So I'll hand it back to Barb at this moment, and she may hand it on to Marianne.
So I think what is really clear here is that we can do something that benefits the vast majority of Canadians, which is improve the Canada Pension Plan. We have solutions for today's seniors about improving the old age security and guaranteed income supplement. We know that the plan can sustain this, so that's great. And a couple of things I want to refer you to, because I want to make sure that you have a chance here. I think that Public Service Alliance of Canada is going to supply you with the link for the Canadian Labour Congress website. I want you to go there and I want you to check out what the difference is in management fees between, for example, a Canada Pension Plan and maybe if you've got some registered retirement savings plans. I know that during the crisis in 2008, one of my RRSPs, because I had those because for a time period I didn't have a pension plan, one of those in the 6-month period between July and December of 2008 lost over 40%. So if I was hoping to retire around then, which I wasn't, but if I was, that means that for a lot of people, they put that off. And what we know is that those RRSPs are not working for people, that the management fees are very high, that they're probably, I think, the highest anywhere in the world. Chris can confirm that, but that's what I seem to recall from previous presentations. And I want you to think about it in terms of you or the people that you know. Do you want to not buy a few Timbits for the next few years and double your Canada pension? Or do you want to say, no, I want to have my Timbits, and then maybe you or the people that you love and care about are making some pretty critical decisions as seniors about where they live, whether it's a reasonable place or not, what they eat. I say it's Timbits or dog food as a retiree. Which one do you want? Whether they buy medication, all of those sorts of things. So this is our time. This is our opportunity to actually do something not just for ourselves, but for a lot of other people. Marianne.
Thanks, Barb. So you've heard Barb and Chris talk a lot about pensions in the context of CPP and for the public. And you're probably wondering why we weren't talking specifically about superannuation or some of the other plans. Here's the deal. First of all, we know that when it comes to talking to our members about benefits that they want to see in the collective agreement, that they want the union to focus on, we know that pensions and job security are of extreme importance. Pensions comes up at the very top. For a good portion of our members who fall under superannuation, it's not negotiated at the bargaining table. It's done with a committee with all the other employee organizations, all the other unions represented by the federal government. And so we have experts that are at that table. We know pensions are important to our members, but we have a really diverse membership. So, for example, all of our Treasury Board and our agency members belong to the Public Service Superannuation Act. 80% of our members fall under superannuation. But we also have about 5.7% that fall under federal pension laws, like our airports, like, a lot of separate employers that are not traditional federal government. They're at about 5.7. We have just a little over 1% fall into public service or public sector plans. So, for example, we have a Deer Lodge Center is under Manitoba legislation, so they belong to a Manitoba pension fund. But at the end of the day, we've got over 13% of our members that have no pension fund at all. And so this is important because those 25,000 members right now have nothing to rely on. So this is about not just fighting to maintain what you have, but it's about fighting for those who don't have anything. One thing that you will hear in mainstream media is that we can't support the superannuation anymore. It's not sustainable. It's costing taxpayers money. And the reality is that we got a 16.3% return on the Public Service Pension Investment Board. That was their numbers. So the superannuation had a 16.3% return, much better than most other portfolios that were at 13.9. So, all the experts are saying, no, it is sustainable, it is properly funded, and there's no reason to change it. Average pension for a federal public sector worker, regardless of what the media might tell you or, the MPs might tell you, the average pension is about $27,380. So that's what you're going to take home on your superannuation. And, we make significant contributions to get that superannuation. We put in 10 cents on every dollar on every dollar earned. So, we do significantly contribute to that. The one thing that I want to mention, and I think Barb and Chris touched on this, the whole idea of target benefit plans. This government has decided, this is the new flavor of the month, and it was going to be this pension fund that would be sustainable, and they sold it to Canadians as a new and innovative way to do it, but that's not the case. So on the slide that you see on the screen, defined benefit is really where most people want to go. Any risk to the plan is shared equally between the employers and and members in that plan, and it's defined. Today that if you retire in 30 years, this is what you're going to get, and that's not going to change. Way on the other side is the defined contribution, which a lot of people have, or they'll have that through a different separate employer, is defined contribution, but that's completely relies on the market. And I personally know people who, when the market crashed, a few years back, had to basically delay retirement plans because what they had invested was basically gone with, the closing of the markets on one day. Target benefit. So it's right in the middle. When the government introduced target benefit, Tony Clement, president of Treasury Board, phoned National President Robin Benson and said, don't worry, this doesn't apply to federal public service employees. This doesn't affect superannuation. The fact that he actually picked up the phone and called tells us that it's on their radar, and it will be next. The big thing with the target benefit is that, number one, it can actually reduce the benefits of someone who's already retired, and the risk is shared between retirees and members who are contributing into the plan. The employer has no risk whatsoever. So how that could be good for Canadians, I guess maybe according to the current government's philosophy, they can probably justify it somehow, but I don't get it. So, the introduction of this really impacts what everyone else's pension could look like in a while, and that's why we thought it was really important to kind of talk about retirement in a whole big scope instead of just focusing on what people have, because with this government, with the stroke of a pen, it could be gone.
All right, thanks everyone. So that sort of concludes the formal presentation portion of the webinar, but we want to give everyone a chance to ask some questions. All right, so first question is from James. So I'm going to unmute your mic, James, and give you an opportunity to ask the question here.
I was just wondering, I know this presentation and this webinar was geared towards the Prairie Region audience, but I was wondering if any of the presenters could speak about the development in Ontario regarding the Ontario Retirement Pension Plan, because I think that's a very significant development. I just want to know if I can get a perspective of the labor movement with respect to that initiative in Ontario.
Sure. I think that the Labour movement agrees with the Ontario government that the preferable response to the retirement income crisis is to expand the Canada Pension Plan. The Ontario government was re-elected with a majority, in part because it was running on this plan to implement an Ontario pension plan, given the fact that the federal government was refusing to act on Canada Pension Plan expansion. And so while we all agree that CPP would be the best way to go, I think the Labour movement supports the initiative taken by the Ontario government to take action now to improve people's retirement incomes in Ontario. There are some problems with the way they've conceived of it. They're planning to, unlike the CPP, to exempt what they call comparable workplace plans, which are defined benefit plans and multi-employer pension plans. This would make the plan much more complex and much less portable. So we have been going to consultations making the argument that the Ontario government should have, in all respects, a plan that mirrors the CPP. And we continue to make that case. I think there's still a lot of road to go in terms of shaping this plan up. But it is a real pension they're talking about. In other respects, it does mimic the CPP. So we're hopeful. But like that government, we still want provinces to put pressure on the federal government to agree to do what needs to be done and expand the CPP.
I do have a question here from someone who said their microphone isn't working right now, from April. So Barb, this might be best for you. But April asks, what has the government's response been so far?
Well, it's interesting because since we've been working on this, the federal government, at one point, we actually had Jim Flaherty at a CLC Executive Council meeting, and he said, well, you know, we need to look at modest increases. And this was in October, and that was then, of course, a couple of months later in December, Harper stood up in Parliament and said, no, we're not going to do it. Now is not the time. And he gave all the excuses that Chris talked about at the end of the presentation about why we can't do this. But we went and we continued to work with the provinces and to get support. And as Chris has pointed out, you know, to get the majority support needed to say that we had the majority of provinces representing the majority of the population, and the federal government has quite frankly just closed its arms and said, no, we're not going to do that. And so it does really require all of us getting to current MPs, but also getting to everyone who either hopes to be a candidate or is a candidate in the upcoming federal election, and say to them, okay, so where are you exactly on the Canada pension? Where are you on the CLC's, the Labour movement's proposal to double the pension benefits? Where are you on taking the age back to 65? Where are you on increasing the benefits? This government has just, even though they should be listening to the provinces, and we did get to the thresholds that we needed, they don't seem to be very interested in doing that. That's been their position, but we're not giving up on it. We're not folding our arms and saying, oh well, they didn't agree with us. This is way too important to way too many people.
While we wait for another hand to raise, I'm going to ask you, Marianne, what are some of the trends that you've been seeing or hearing about at the bargaining table regionally in regards specifically to pensions?
So what we're seeing at some of the regional units is that pensions are on the table. Employers believe that it's one place that they can save some money, and also not just save money, but save the liability. So it's something that every bargaining team is having to be extremely educated on pensions, because sometimes they're throwing things down like the very complicated pension schemes that it takes a lot of time to really wade through to see what the consequences are we're also seeing some employers that are basically trying to go to a two-tier pension system. So you could have a new worker sitting right next to a worker who's been there for 20 years. One has a defined benefit, one has a defined contribution. So they're basically looking for any opportunity to make a buck or to save a buck. And it's interesting because I have to say I really hadn't paid attention to the one point that Chris made about CPP contributions being fully tax exempt for write-off income. So employers actually are making CPP contributions, but it doesn't it doesn't cost them anything. So when you have these other pension funds, that's where they're looking to do a concession, and they're claiming it's because it's the trend and the funds are not sustainable. But it all depends who the actuary is. So
I got a question here from Michelle. She says her mic's not working, but what can we personally do to assist with the PSAC goals with regards to our pensions, letters to MPs, and she says it sounds like the indexing may be removed. Can you talk a bit about that?
At this point, there's no changes. I think the fact that the government has introduced the targeted benefit and specifically maybe it's the pessimist in me, but whenever they make a point of saying it doesn't apply to you, that to me means you're next. So I think the first thing that we have to do is make sure that every person, every member, regardless of what type of pension they have, fully understands it. Too many people, when they come into the government, particularly, pay no attention because it's so far down the road. Hey, I did it, right? Now I'm like 28 years in, and I want to know what my pension's going to look like. You have to pay attention to that. So ask the questions, ask for the retirement prep training, and make sure that others around you know it, and talk to your MPs, and make sure and let them know that that is something that is not, we ran the campaign several years back about hands off our pension. That stands. So hands off our sick leave, hands off our pension.
I have the question from Susan. I'm going to try to unmute her and see if she can ask it. Let's see here. Susan, go ahead.
Okay. The question is, as we know, federal election is coming up this fall, 2015, in October 19th to be exact. What can we do to bring it to the foreminds of the MPs in our ridings that this is an important subject that needs to be brought forward onto their tables?
Anybody who's running for a nomination should be questioned about this if they're asking for people to come out and support them. Anybody who's running, who gets a nomination and wants to be elected, should be asking people about this, and you should be getting commitments from them. The labor movement has decided, in addition to some additional campaigns that individual unions will run, we have 4 major areas that we're going to be concentrating on. They are retirement security, they are health care, child care, and jobs and the economy. So obviously retirement security is very much there for us, and we're pushing hard on that and generally. But it is, I think, going out and talking to your friends, your neighbors, your members, listening to them about what's going on, but also providing them with some of this information. And some of the things that they can do. I mean, you can send them to the CLC website. There is a calculator there that if you're, 27 years old or 52 years old or, 30 years old, whatever it may be, you can figure out, given your income, given your age, what this would mean in terms of the benefit that you would end up getting. So I think people need to have that chance to be interactive and do that.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, the one thing that I think is critical, and I completely agree with Barb, that we need to get to the candidates and ask them that question. So you're running, you want to represent me in the House of Commons. what is your position on expanding the CPP so that people can retire with dignity? Ask them for what they think, so that when they do get elected, you go back and talk to them again, because it's something that I think we take the senior population for granted, and we really have to. It's really sad when seniors who have worked hard all their lives can't make a go of it, have to ask their children for help, have to ask someone for help. That's not retirement with dignity.
Okay, great. Thanks, Marianne. Thanks, Barb. Thanks, Chris. So, Marianne, closing remarks here. We're going to shut it down in a few minutes. So, final thoughts on tonight's webinar and the topic of pensions.
This link will be available on the recorded version after. So please make sure to go to the website and look at the video. Share it on Facebook. I'm presuming you can Facebook it, you can tweet it, you can do whatever you need to. That will start the conversation, and it'll show everyone in real terms how to be able to increase CPP. There's also a number of ways to follow on social media. So for the Facebookers, the tweeters, the YouTubers, the whatever else they have, feel free. I mean, we've had some really great dialogues with politicians through Twitter, and I must say that some of our members are absolute masters at it. So if there's something you want to know, utilize that and continue the dialogue. So use this as an opportunity to share this out. So this month was retirement. You see on the screen, and it's also on the Prairie's website. Next month, the webinar, March is International Women's Day and Women's Month. So we're going to be talking about childcare.
And not just for people who have children.
I was just going to say, but it's not just for people with kids, because I've had a few aha moments around childcare. It's something that everyone needs to be concerned about, so we're going to have a discussion around that. April, we're going to be talking about your political rights in the workplace. So when the employer tells you, you can't put a political lawn sign at your house, well, this is a preview, but we're going to tell you that's not true. You can do that. In May, we're going to be talking about labor history, and in June, we're going to be talking about health and safety. So, we want to hear from you if you have any other topics that you're interested in, and looking for your feedback. The other thing you can do, and we have been promoting this, the next federal election is scheduled for October 19th, 2015, if not sooner, but at this point, October 19th, we are asking members to take action on the 19th of every month. 19 minutes on the 19th, whatever you want to do it's a barbecue, it's February, but we're prairie folks, so it's like not a big deal. You want to head out to an MP's office, you want to do a picket out on the street, you want to get your members together and get some pictures. It's really important to build momentum to the election. Use the information you got tonight, and we'll be doing some really big 19th events, especially in March, so look for some information on that. Other than that, I want to especially thank Barb and Chris for joining us. It was, I think, new technology for them. So
not for Chris, for me.
But this is an opportunity for you to see leaders and to hear from people. So I want to thank you very much for taking time out of your day and your night to do this. And there's also, you'll get a survey after the webinar. We really would ask you to take a few minutes to fill that out. We look at all of the comments, and it helps us make things better. So thanks, Jeffrey, for moderating. Thanks, Barb and Chris. And thank you all for taking time out of your evening.